surrender to the reality that this is what I can do now. I think that's a great lesson. That requires that the human being knows, is aware of who they are, what they're capable of, where they are, and like what's the right play now. And that takes a surrender mindset of everything doesn't have to be a home run.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to get it all done today. It's harsh to wake up and face the reality of like, I'm not sure why I'm doing this. I'm not sure who I am. This doesn't make sense. And we're so used to putting on a mask for the world. Pretty soon, like, again, we just start to have these personas that we put out depending on where we are.
Yeah. And it seems like it's interesting. I'm actually writing a book and I just started to really finish the beginning of it. And the beginning is in part telling the story of how we met.
Nice.
Yeah. And, how the awakening that, I had in large part, due to meeting you and working with Built to Lead.
Mm-hmm.
And
doing the work.
And then doing the work. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But what I was kind of curious about for those that are sleepwalking, it feels almost a little like it's you're a little helpless. And what I am thinking about in hindsight is like more of an energetic thing. Or in my case, I think I was just noticing or feeling like things are not going the way that I want them to go. I don't feel, there's something I wasn't feeling. It was more of a feeling. I was in my head about it, but in hindsight, I just felt unhappy or uncomfortable or like, unsatisfied. And so when I met you, it was like, I think I need to work with this guy. I think he can help me. I didn't know I had no idea what was really going on. And I'm wondering, I guess, what is it that people should be paying attention to in that early stage where they're not awake?
So my short answer is there was a great film put out in 1999 that I have every client watch at the beginning of our work together. And this movie. Mm-hmm. And it is I think, just a brilliant wake-up call is what the artist that wrote that wanted to deliver to the world in 1999. And the movie's called The Matrix. And so I would say the short thing for somebody to do is just, if you watch that movie and it doesn't stir something in you, mm-hmm. then this probably isn't for you. You know what I mean? But if you watch that movie and you really pay attention to Neo, Trinity, Morpheus, and the agents, and the Matrix, it was so written for today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think more and more, the more that I think COVID exaggerated it, and technology just preys on it. Technology is great if you know how to use it. Technology can take over if you let it just use you. And then you'll get lost. You know what I mean? And I think The Matrix really shows a real picture of that. That back when they wrote it in the late 90s was seemingly very science fiction. And today it feels very science reality. Mm-hmm. And so I would just tell people, watch The Matrix. If that stirs you, start to write about what are you feeling? And I tell people, just throw it up and just write, what am I feeling? And then what am I thinking? And then what do I want to do with that? And if you would just do that every day for a period of 3 weeks, that's kind of my recipe. Just, if you want to use Built to Lead as a stir, use that, read a day and write. Get a book you like, read a bit of it and write. Mm-hmm. And don't write whatever you read, you know what I mean? But write what you're feeling. Because most of us have forgotten how to feel life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you sleepwalk. Yeah. And so I want people to to where they can feel stuff. And I'm not saying you want to be ruled by your feelings. That's not what I'm saying. But we've lost touch with a lot of that. And you got to feel life to figure out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get there just with your rational brain.
Yeah, I think that's a great learning, because most of us are thinking about life and not feeling our way through it.
Yeah.
And the feeling has so much intelligence. There's so much information available if you can pay attention to the feelings. And it's sort of a funny thing. People are uncomfortable even talking about feelings. It's like taboo or, I don't know, weird, especially men. But, it's if you think about it as information, it's just really intelligent.
Well, and so let me put it in practical terms. When I want people to feel life, I'm not just talking about tuning into their feelings or their emotions. I'll give you a couple examples. You're one of them. So what I mean by when I want people to feel life, when you started Kaufman Development, and you and I are down North Star in the short north where we've been, and people listening to this over and over have heard us talk about this forever. It's a great visual in my mind, though, of feeling. And you had no projects of your own yet. You had no teammates yet. You were on your own. We're in the short north, and you're looking for space, right? A space where you're going to park Kaufman Development and build it. And we walked after having lunch. We walked down High Street, went into a few places. They kind of all looked the same to me. And we turned down Warren, and the building, it looked like a dump to me. It didn't look the same as the other ones we'd gone into. It was being remodeled or whatever you want to call it, right? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you walked into it, and I'm like, oh God, this definitely isn't the place in my mind. I didn't say a thing, but I'm like, this won't last long. And you walked in, looked around, and you said, this is it. And I'm like, PK, this is it. And you were like, yeah, I feel it.
Yeah.
And that's what masters do when they discover whatever nuance to their craft. It's a feeling. And you felt something about that space that I didn't feel, but you were right. And that is, you got to tune into that. You got to feel life. If you're going to be a great developer, you don't just follow the numbers. Everybody can do that. You follow the numbers, and then you develop a feel for what's the right real estate. Where would this fly?
Yeah.
And you have a great feel for your business, which is why you've been successful. We work with sports teams. It's the same thing. They have to develop a feel for the game. If they simply play it by their rational brain, they'll never be great. The great ones have a feel that they've developed over time, which they have to be in tune with their feelings to develop the feel for the game. Does that make any sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And, in fact, we just actually renewed our lease for a 12th year. I think it's 12 years.
So great.
And so, that was a feeling. And we've talked about this on the podcast, that you don't develop gut instincts without doing a lot of sit-ups, right?
That's right.
Like you have to do your reps to really develop that sort of, instinct.
That's right.
And you mentioned the sports teams, and I was actually just coming from tennis this morning and thinking about, the feeling. And I know that you are a huge U2 fan. The book Surrender, you and I have talked about, listening to the music. I've been on kind of repeat listening to Bad in the mornings when I'm journaling. And what is coming to mind right now is just the idea of letting go and surrendering to the feeling. I think that a lot of times what happens is you have the feeling, and then the mind comes in and says, but no, and that's, that'll be too hard, and that's too expensive, and that's too messy, or I'm not, I better be careful, using the tennis thing, this morning, Ty Tucker was pushing me on when you have a tough shot, when you're like in a bad position, just make the shot. You don't have to hit a winner,
Right.
and it's sort of a combination of a feeling, right? Of just kind of letting go and trusting the stroke. And there's so much there, it's part of the reason I just love, sports is because you can learn a lot about life, and anything that you do. But talk about, that piece, the letting go, the surrendering, the trusting of the feelings that we all have. And most people ignore.
The surrender topic, that book is so great. But the Surrender Project, I mean, there's so many good thoughts around that are just like timeless truths that it's so hard to just give a hack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody listening to a podcast, they want to do this. Mm-hmm. This is the way. And so like, I think the surrender, if we were to go back to your example, how do you surrender in the game of tennis when you're out of position? And I think, again, it comes back to you've been playing tennis and you've been working on your game, I know now, for years. And Ty Tucker, for those listeners that don't know who that is, that's like a guy who has his name on a building already at Ohio State, which is like never been done.
They just won their 17th consecutive Big Ten championship.
Unreal.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Crazy. Number 2 in the country. They won it all again, won it many times. So this dude is quite the coach, right? And he's coaching you up about what to do when you're out of position. And he's saying, don't go for the winner. Just get it back, get it in play. Give yourself time to surrender to the reality that this is what I can do now. Keep the ball, keep it going. I think that's a great lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So that requires that the tennis player or the athlete or the human being is aware of who they are, what they're capable of, where they are, and like what's the right play now.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a surrender mindset of everything doesn't have to be a home run.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to get it all done today.
Yeah.
Just live to find another, in that case, point,
mm-hmm.
another shot. Live to find another day. But that's hard to do when your ego is dominating all you're about. You haven't surrendered to anything. You got to win everything.
Yeah, right.
And I work with a lot of young people who are used to winning everything.
Yeah.
Whether they're in business or in sport.
Yeah.
And this concept of surrender makes their blood boil when I say, hey man, come on, just like let it go.
Yeah.
Let's surrender. Let's just train and let's not look at what previous best, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He calls it in tennis terms an aggressive push. Push, for people that don't know, is just like you're just pushing the ball back. You're keeping it in play.
Right.
He's like, you don't want to do that because you're going to be eaten up by a better player, but you want to be an aggressive push.
I like that.
Which I thought was, sort of a great metaphor for life. Like you want to lean in, you want to get aggressive at times, you want to go for it. And, you've been really good at coaching me about playing a long game.